All right, Mariam, we can see your screen. Perfect. Perfect.
Okay. So, hello everyone. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Mariam Mohammed, and I am a senior computer science student at University of Bahrain. I would like to welcome you all for our first session on hands-on machine learning with TensorFlow. And for today, we will start by an introduction to TensorFlow. Okay, so first, the big question right now for all of us is, what is TensorFlow? If we can see that TensorFlow is a free and open source software library for machine learning, it has a comprehensive, flexible ecosystem of tools, libraries, and community resources that lets researchers push the state of the art in ML and developers easily build and deploy ML powered application. So, to sum up, what they are trying to tell us that TensorFlow is a library that will allow us to develop an ML application or machine learning application. Okay, TensorFlow was developed by Google Brain team, which is a part of Google AI team. A cloud TPU enables you to run your machine learning workloads on Google's accelerator hardware using TensorFlow. We will come back for this later to explain it in more details. Okay, TensorFlow has APIs available in several languages, both for constructing and executing a TensorFlow graph. Uh, these languages are Python, JavaScript, C++, and Java. Among these languages, the most stable API is the Python one, and this is what we will use for this session. Since we mentioned the programming language, TensorFlow has also a TensorFlow.js. What is TensorFlow.js? It's a library that we can develop animal models in JavaScript and use ML directly in the browser or in Node.js. As well, we have TensorFlow Lite, which is a mobile library for deploying models on mobile microcontrollers and other edge devices. So this is for mobile phones, and this library is for to use it on JavaScript. So why TensorFlow? We have a multiple and different of libraries for machine learning. Why should I go to TensorFlow among of these? According to TensorFlow website or TensorFlow teams, they are saying Tensor, to answer this question, which is why TensorFlow, they are saying it's easy model building. So build and train ML models easily using intuitive, high-level APIs like Keras and eager execution, which makes for immediate model iteration and easy debugging. So they promise us that you will have an easy to use library. Okay. Reposit ML production anywhere. It's easily to train and deploy models in the cloud on a prem and browser on device, no matter what language you use. So you can use TensorFlow anywhere. It's a powerful experimentation for research. It's a simple and flexible architecture to take new ideas from concept to code to state of the art models and to publication faster. They promise us that TensorFlow is a powerful library that will help the researchers that's working on machine learning field to give them the best experience. Now, since we hear about what the team is saying, we still have this question: why TensorFlow? According to Francois Cholet, which is an software engineering and AI researcher, he is he contributed in TensorFlow, and actually he is the creator of Keras. So he is saying with tools like Colab, Keras, and TensorFlow. We know TensorFlow, but we still haven't heard about Colab or Keras, and we will come back for this later. Virtually anyone can solve in a day with no initial investment problems that would have required an engineering team working for a quarter and 20,000 in hardware in 2014. So what he's trying to saying is TensorFlow and the other tools will help us to save money and provide us with a high level computing with a low cost. Because people in 2014 was spending a lot of money to have a powerful tools. So, since we mentioned the hardware, let's take a look at this. What is a GPU or TPU? We heard about TPU from here, where I said we will go back for this later. So, what is TPU? TPU is first. Let me introduce GPU. GPU is the graphical processing unit. Sorry guys, but okay. GPU is the graphical processing unit, which we have it on our PCs, our mobiles, and even we can have it as cloud GPU. It provides us with a fast computing, but the focus now is what is tensor processing unit or What is TPU? TPU, or Tensor Processing Unit, is something that similar to GPU, but it works in a much faster way. It's developed by Google to specially for the neural networks to allow us to have a faster computing. So if the GPU is fast, the TPU is much faster. And it's available on Google Centers, as we can see.
Just a quick question, Mariam. Just a quick question. So, as you mentioned about TPU, that is Tensor Processing Unit. Do you mean by
Yeah.
TPU as it's like a supercomputer? We can say that in short for machine learning.
Yes.
Can we say that?
Yes.
All right. All right. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. So the question now is, where can I write my code to use TensorFlow? We have two options. One of them is Google Colab, and it's a tool offered by Google researcher that allows users to write and execute Python code in their web browsers. And we have Notebook, which is a web-based interactive development environment for notebooks, code, and data. The main difference, they are actually, before I start for the differences, they are similar to each other. In both of them, you can write the code and execute it and do whatever you want. But the main difference is Google Colab will allow, it's building on the Google Drive. So it's built on cloud, while Jupyter Notebook, it's something you have to install it into your device to work with. And if you want to install it, you can use it with Akanoda, which is a software that allow us use it, to use Jupyter Notebook on it on our device. So
Uh, Maths
lastly,
korabo raf
we
kata
come
de.
for this. We have to see how we can use TensorFlow in
Kolam koi?
real life case where they use it.
Kolam koi amar?
Let's watch this video.
Extreme weather is changing.
Thank you.
There's more extreme rainfall, heavy flooding, forest fires. There isn't really a signature done. Being able to predict these extreme events more accurately is kind of the big challenge that we're facing right now. There's 100 terabytes of climate data every day from satellites, from observations, from models. So climate data is a big data problem. We need things that are fast, that can sift through all of that data rapidly and accurately. And deep learning is almost perfectly poised for problems in climate science.
A lot of NERSC users are using TensorFlow. It's one of the more popular frameworks. We use TensorFlow to iterate quickly over different models, different layer parameters. For this particular climate project, to create the deep learning model, we started from segmentation models which have proven to be successful, for example, our satellite imagery segmentation tasks. And then we used TensorFlow to enhance the models until we found like a set of models which perform well enough for this specific task. But for the volume of the data, complexity of the data, the network required 14 teraflops. So if you want to do this on your workstation, it would take like months to train.
To really tackle these problems requires the largest computational resources that are available on the planet. So systems like the Summit supercomputer. It's 2 tennis courts in total size. I mean, this thing is state-of-the-art. It's 1,000,000 times faster than your common laptop. 3.3 exaflops. Just imagine what you do at your work workstation, but now imagine having 27,000 times that power. We can do that now.
We were surprised how good it actually scales. 1,000 nodes and 2,000 nodes, 5,000 nodes.
This was the first time anybody's ever run an AI application at this scale. Instead of having the climate scientists figure out how to write high-tune code, they could express things in a very natural way in Python in TensorFlow and get all the high-performance code that most HPC people are used to within TensorFlow.
We're now entering the space where AI can actually contribute to the predictions of these extreme weather events.
When you combine traditional HPC with AI, you can tackle things we never thought that we could tackle. Fusion reactor research, understanding diseases like Alzheimer's, cancer, right? That's incredible.
We've shown that with a high productivity framework such as TensorFlow, you can get to massive scale and you can get awesome performance and accomplish your goals.
Genetics, neuroscience, cosmology, high energy physics. That's immensely exciting for me.
So now let's try to get our hands on doing something with TensorFlow. Okay. If we are going to the web and searching for Google Colab, if we visit the first link, it will give us this. And this is the environment that I have told you about in the slides, where we can write our codes. So to start a new notebook, we will press
एक मिनट
here.
बोलो.
And we got this. So it's created for us a file of type IPython notebook, and you can rename it. For here, you can do like this. You can write your code. It's a Python notebook, so we can write Python code. So if we are saying hello world, and just to press the run cell, so that's it. We got the output. Okay, you can play around
Just a small note
save.
to, sorry, Mariam, to interrupt you. Just a small note to anyone who's gonna start. So I have already shared a link. If you guys are interested, you can work along with Mariam. Have a look at the code base. Have a look at collaboratory. Have a look on that, and we can work along in this stage at the stage. And just because maybe for, I don't know if it's also for others, but for me it's lagging because she's sharing the screen. So please bear with us. All right, Mariam, you can go ahead.
Okay, and you can from the tools to change the settings, like if you like the dark theme, or change the font size or whatever. Okay, a good point. Here we have a Collab Pro. What's Collab Pro? Collab Pro is, it will provide us with a faster computing than what's the free version that's available. And unfortunately, Collab Pro, it's not available for Bahrain. So it's good to know about it. And you can for sure link your GitHub account with it. And it's really easy to use it. So where can I find my file. Actually, if we go to the drive, we can see here a folder with the name collab notebooks. Here it is the one that I created just a second ago. And for this session, we will use a notebook that I created before to save our time. Okay. We will go through the fundamental concepts of TensorFlow. So
কেডা কে
first,
কি
how
হইছে
can I import TensorFlow
হইছে
to
এখন
the
ম্যাথস লেখো
notebook? Just
এটা
by
রাখো আমি
saying
পরে ধরবো আমার এটা
import
শেষ হয় নাই আমি পরে
TensorFlow
ধরতেছি
as TF. You
তুমি
can
আগে
change
ম্যাথস
this
লেখো
name as whatever you want, but the most used name is TF, and it's really well known as that. So just by saying import TensorFlow as TF, and we have TensorFlow to our notebook, and by saying TensorFlow dot underscore version underscore, we will get the version of TensorFlow that we are running right now.
এই
So
কি
if I
চাইছে
run it,
একটু আগে এসে অফ করছে একটু দাঁড়াও তোমার
we
সামনেতে অফ করছে
import the TensorFlow to
ই খুলে
our
ফেলো নালে
notebook. So first, half of the name is
বালিশ নিয়ে
tensor.
উপরে রাখো
Actually, what is tensor? This is an important question for us. Let's see. Tensors are a multi-dimension arrays with a uniform type. We call it a data type or D type for shortcut. It could be a numbers, so we can use a tensor to represent the prices of houses. It could be an image, and how can I use an image as a tensor? Since we said before, it's a numbers. For image, we will use the pixel of the image itself. Okay, and it could be a text using tensors to represent a word, and it could be some other form of information or data you want to represent with a number. So, how can I create a tensor? First, let's create a scalar. So we will define a variable, which is a scalar, and assign it to TF, which is TensorFlow dot constant. This function or this function will create for us a tensor. Since we pass in this function just a number, it's just a 7. So what we will have, let's see. And we called by print, so we got as an output tf.tensor
হ্যাঁ হইতেছে
7, and the shape is empty,
কার
and the data type is
আরেকবার
integer
দে আজকে এটাই করবে
32. Interesting. Let's
আরেকবার
see
দে
the
আজকেও এটা
next.
সারা যাবে না 2 দিন ধরে করতেছে আরেকবার দে পড়তে থাকো
Let's check the dimension of the tensor that we have created. So by a function that is in the im, which is the number of dimensions, if we run it, we will get 0. Why did I get a 0 while I have a data in it? So what do you think?
I have a quick answer for this. If anyone would like to go on, they can, but I would volunteer to answer. So, because if you could go back to the code, it it is
Okay.
because we have defined it should have a space and data type, but I think we don't have it. So it's one dimension and we don't have other parameters for it. I could be wrong,
Okay,
but yeah, that's my take.
okay. Let's see. So we will try now to create a vector. We define an variable and just as we did before, tf.constant, and here we pass an array of 10 comma 10, or list. In a Python we call it a list, so it's 10 comma 10, and if we print it, what we will get? Now we get tf.tensor 10 10, and the shape is 2 with comma, and there's nothing after the comma, and the data type is the same. So what's happening here? Why we get an empty shape here while we got a 2 with a comma and then a space without anything? Let's check the dimension. By just as we did before, we will call the variable dot the number of the dimension, and what we will get is 1. Here we got 0 and here we get 1. What's happened? Let's try think bigger. Okay, let's create a matrix. The matrix will have more than one dimension. And to create a matrix, we have the variable. We will assign it to tf.constant, just as we did before. And we have an array or a list inside a brackets, an outer brackets, and it's hold two lists. One of them is 10 7 and 7 10. What we will get if we print it? We get 10 7 7 10, and the shape is 2 2, while the data type is integer 32. So now I think it makes sense. So let's try to figure out what's happened. The shape is 2 2. 2 present the rows, while we have a 2 as a columns, while here we have 2 and here we have a 0 because it's a scalar. If we try to run the number of dimension for it, we will get 2 because it's a two-dimensional. It's a matrix. So what we noticed here is the data type is the same. We have all of them was integer 32. So by default, TensorFlow creates tensors with either an integer 32 or float 32 data type. So it's the default data type for TensorFlow. And
Juldi
this is
Sheshkar.
known as 32-bit precision. And we can say that the higher the number, the more precise the number, the more space it will take from our computer. So since we know that the default type of the tensors is integer 32, we can change the data type. So if we create another matrix, And just like before, we say tf dot constant, and we pass our new matrix. We get and we define the data type. Here we say tf dot float 16. We specify the data type, and if we print it, we will get tf dot tensor and the matrix that we created, shape 3 2, since we have a 3 rows and 2 columns, and the data type is as we define it, it's float 16. If you print the dimension, it will be 2. Perfect. Now we we see three things: scalar, vector, matrix, but we are trying to define tensors. So what's a tensor? Since we are saying it's a multi-dimensional array. So let's create it. If we are trying to create a tensor, so as before, the variable equal tf dot constant, and if we create a multi-dimensional array, it's difficult to read a little bit, I think. So this is one, and this is the second, and this is the third one. All of them are together in a
কি
one
করতেছস? এই আয়শা,
bracket.
আয়শা
So
বলতেছি ফাতিমা।
this is a multi-dimensional array. If we print it just like before, we will get the tensor that we created and shape of a 3 to 3. So what is it? 3 to 3. So we have 1, 2, 3 on our tensor, and these three have 1, 2, which is represent the second number. Inside these, all of them have 1 element, 2, 3. So that makes sense. The shape is represent row by column. So to sum up, scalar is just the number, and it's have no dimension, as we say before, as we see before.
না ক্যামেরা না,
While the vector is
এটা দেবো।
an array, it can be horizontal or vertical array, and it can hold any amount of numbers. It doesn't matter. While the matrix is two-dimensional array, and the tensor is like a nested arrays, and it could be instead of a multi arrays. You can specify it as you want. Okay, all what we created, in fact, is called a tensors at the end. Regardless what we name it. If it is scalar, also we call it tensor. If it is a vector, we call it a tensor. Matrix, we call it a tensor. All of them are tensors. All
7
what we
প্লাস 7 কি
created
11 হয়?
till now
হ্যাঁ,
is a constant. Is
এনে কি লিখছো?
tensor.
এনে 6 প্লাস 1 লিখছো, তো
The
এটা প্লাস
constant
করতে হবে না?
tensor
তুমি খালি
something
6
that we
প্লাস 7 করে
can't
প্লাস করো,
change
উপরেটা
it.
ভুলে যাও কেন?
What if I want to change an element
খেলা
inside
খেলা লাগা রাখছে
inside my
পড়াশোনারে।
tensor?
ঠিক
How
করো,
can I
রাত করো।
create? How can I do this?
সবগুলি এরকমই করছো না? এটা কে প্লাস করবে?
So we
উপরে এটা কে
have
প্লাস করবে?
another function which is
রাত করো।
tf.variable. This will
সবগুলি।
create form if I create the tensor with tf.variable,
উপরের তুমি যে উপরে
and
একটা
just like
ক্যারি দিছো,
before,
ওই ক্যারিটা তো অ্যাড
if I
করতে হবে
print it to
ফাতিমা,
see
তাছাড়া তো রং।
what we
খালি
have in
নিচেরটা
it,
না তো, যেরকম এই দেখো,
shape
মুখে
2,
দাও, পেন্সিল দাও।
since it's a
তুমি কি
vector,
করছো? 6 প্লাস 7 প্লাস করছো,
and the data type
পাইছো
is
11।
the default
উপরেরটা এটা
one,
কে ভুলে যাও
a
কেন? এটা তো অ্যাড
numpy
করতে হবে না?
array 10 by 10 with a data type of integer 32. We will come back
ঠিক
for
করে
this
অ্যাডিশন করো
later.
প্লিজ।
And since we are trying to change an element inside the tensor that we created, so if we just call the variable that's hold the tensor itself, and just by specifying the place that we will change the element in it, I specify 0, which is here, dot assign 7. This what will do for me. It will change this 10 to 7. And if we print it, we get 710, and that's what we want. Okay, since we see here numpy array, so what is a numpy array? Numpy or numpy library, to be specific. Numpy is a Python library used for working with arrays. So it's a special library for Pythons that allow us to work with arrays. And just like we did before, you can do everything what we did with NumPy. And to work with NumPy, you should first import NumPy as NB, and to create a tensor or to create an array with it, or a vector, since we will define a vector here, we will say the variable equal nb.array, so it will create for me the tensor, and we will pass, since we want a vector, we will try for a vector, we will pass the data that we
ছোট
will use
সংখ্যা
for it,
হাতে, বড়
and we
সংখ্যা
define the
মাথায়,
data
এভাবে
type
করলে
as a
অ্যাডিশন হবে,
float.
তাছাড়া অ্যাডিশন হবে না জিন্দেগিতে।
Let's see if I run it. We got an array with 1, 2, 3, 4. What if I want to create a matrix? Just like before, but the change is we are using the NumPy library, not the TensorFlow. So we will say
9 প্লাস 6 কত হয়?
nb.array,
কত?
and
14।
inside it we will
কি হয়?
define the
6 হাতে নিছো
brackets. We
আর 9
have
মাথায়,
a matrix
9 এর
of
পরে
a
গুনো,
two-dimensional, which is a
10
two-dimension, and we pass our data,
তো কি লিখছো তুলা, কি লিখছিলা তুমি?
and that's it.
রাপ
We
করো,
got
ঠিক
our
করো।
matrix. So now the question is,
কেন 5 দিবা?
since
0
we
প্লাস 5 কি
can
হয়? 5
do
ক্যারি নাম্বার যায়
the
নাকি?
same thing that we did it with tensors,
15 লেখো,
it's just the
1 5।
same. There is no difference. So why we are using tensor and why we are using NumPy library, since we will get the same output at the end? Actually, there is an important difference between them. The main difference between tensors and NumPy arrays, which is also an n-dimensional array of numbers, is tensors can be used on GPUs and TPUs, which we define it in the slides. And benefits of being able to run on GPUs and TPUs is a faster computation. This means if we wanted to find a patterns in a numerical representation of our data, we can generally find them faster using GPUs and TPUs. So tensors are using GPUs and TPUs, while NumPy arrays will not use these. And that's the only different among them. But an NumPy library by itself, it have multiple functions, and it's a really powerful library that you can do multiple things with array with it. Now, let's try to say hello world in a fancy way. So, first, before we read what we will build, let me introduce you something we call it a neural network. First, what's a neural network? Neural network is a series of algorithms that will try to figure out a relationship among the data. And actually, neural networks is a mimic of the way the human brain is working or operates, but definitely they are not the same. So from here we can see a simple neural network. Neural network that have always an input layer and output layer, while in the middle we have some hidden layers. For our case, we will have a one hidden layer and one input, one output, but in real life cases, it could be different. You might have
হ্যাঁ তাহলে নিচে নিচে দিবা
different numbers of hidden layers or a multiple numbers of hidden layers, and you can have a multiple numbers of outputs as will the inputs. But just keep it simple. We will try now to solve our problem by creating a simple neural network. So let's read what we will try to do. So we will attempt to create a neural network that will predict the cost of the house according to the numbers of rooms. So house prices are one of
ওইটা
the
লিখে নেকো
important
অ্যাডিশন করে নিক
cases in that machine learning trying to solve it. And in real life cases, this problem has multiple features, but to just simplify it, we will use the numbers of rooms as our feature for today. Okay, assume that the base cost for the house is 100,000 and any additional room will cost 50,000. So the cost of the house with one room is 150,000 and the cost of the house that have two rooms will cost 200,000. So first, to work with these, let me introduce you to something to Keras. Actually, we hear about Keras from the slides where was I saying that Keras and Collab and TensorFlow are powerful tools. So now let's see what's Keras. Keras is a powerful, easy-to-use Python library for developing and evaluating deep learning models. It runs on top of TensorFlow. Previously, Keras was a separate library by itself, but recently they merged with TensorFlow, so it could run efficiently. So how can I use Keras? First, as we did before, we import TensorFlow, we import the Numpy. Actually, we don't need them since we import them before, but just to clarify things for you, and from TensorFlow, import Keras. We import the Keras from TensorFlow, so we will be able to work to develop
Nikini ek kottuka se dekhini age.
deep learning models or to create a neural network through Keras. Okay. Since
ফোনটাতে
we
কি
are
ভিডিও
dealing with
করতেছেন?
Python, we will
কি করস?
define our function, which we name it house model, and first we will define the inputs and the outputs. So this is our input, and we define it as a NumPy array with this value 1, 2, 3,
মানে দে
4, 5, 6. This value represents the number of rooms that we will let it as an input, and our output should be just as we said before. If we have a one room, the price of the house will be 150.
গেট খোলা আছে আসুনে।
If we have two rooms, the price will be 200,000. But to let our network work better, we have to scale it down and to make things better. So it will be as a float number at the end, but you know that the price is in thousand, and you can read it as thousand. So one room for 100 or 1.5, two for 2, three for 2.5, 4 for 3, 5 for 3.5, and 6 for 4. So we define the input and the output. Then let's define our model. So we will say model equal tf.keras, and this is the way we use keras in our model, dot sequential. Okay, this is a new thing for us. What is sequential? Sequential is something that will allow us to group a linear stack of layers into the models. So it will stack the layers on each other. And
তোর
inside
জন্য
the
ভাইয়া বসে আছে ছাড়
sequential,
জলদি চেক করবো।
we just say
আজ তুই তো দেখাইলি না কতদূর। কি করতেছিস তুই? লিখবি এখন?
keras dot layers
আগে দেখি কি
dot
কতটুক
dense.
দেখাইতেও তো বললাম।
What we are trying to do
ওখানে হাত
here,
দিলে পেন্সিল পড়বে না না?
keras dot layers dot dense will
পাগলি
define
নাম্বারের।
our
ছোট বাচ্চাদের
hidden
চেয়ে ছোট
layer.
বাচ্চা তুই। ওনে হাত দিয়ে এরকম এরকম করতেছিস তো পেন্সিল পড়বে না তোর? বল দেখি।
And inside it we pass units
আচ্ছা লেখ যা, ছোটই আছে।
and
শেষ
input
কর লেখা
shape.
নিয়ে।
Units is
যা
the
বাসা যা লিখিস।
output
তোকে না ওকে
size
বলছে।
that we will have it from the hidden. Since we have
সীমান্ত বসুক, তোরা যা।
from this we desire to have
পড়া
a
শেষে
one
লিখবি।
output, so we define the units equal 1, and the input shape is equal to 1, just as we have here. We have one input into our hidden layer.
যাও।
So we define the hidden layer, and then we have to compile it. So the compile, uh, just by calling the model dot compile, the compile function actually will take multiple attributes, but for our case, to simplify it, we will just have the most important things, which is the optimizer and the lose. The optimizer, we define it as
হ্যাঁ সুন্দর ফিনিশ করো
SGD. SGD is the gradient descent, and it's adjust the width to minimize the lose, to maximize the lose function. So just by defining the optimizers to SGD, or the gradient descent, and the loss to mean squared error, and then we have to train the model by calling model.fit. .fit is the function that's responsible for training our models, and it must always have the input and the output and the number of epochs.
like a finish okay.
So we will pass in it the input, which is rooms, and the output, which is the price, and we define the epochs. The epochs is the number of what we desire to take, the number of time that we will trying to train it. So for our case, we will try to train it 1,000 times, and then simply we just see we just return the
একটু
model.
মুখে ধরতে দেখতো ইংলিশটা ধরতে দেখতে পারে নাকি ইংলিশ দেখ রিডিং দিছিলাম আর
So
ওটা দেখতে
let's
পারে
run
নাকি
it. I run this. Okay. And then we have to get the trained models to let us to use it. So just by defining a variable, and for this variable we call the function that we have defined it before. So if we run it,
হ্যাঁ ওরা তো ওরা যেতে বলছে তো বাসায় কথা বলছে ফাতেমারে
so over the time we can see that the loss was 91.66, but at the end it's become much, much, much lesser. So what's it trying to do is the lose is to figure out how well or bad our model is doing. So we train it, and now let's try to test the neural network or the model with data that we don't have it in our input. We don't have 7 like example. So room test equal to 7, and prediction equal model to predict, and we pass in it the variable that we have defined it, and we will print the prediction, and we got 4.5. Is it correct? Do you think, guys, it's correct?
I think it was not defined before right so it's just guessing a value predicting a value
But is it correct, since we are trying to, the base is 100 and any additional room will cost 50? It should be correct, right?
yes it's 4.5 so it did predict
Yeah.
the proper one yes correct
Yes. What about if we try to with some bigger number? like 20. And we got 11. If we try to calculate it,
Yes, it will be right. So even though we
it will
didn't
be 1
define it,
million. Yeah,
yeah, even though we did not define it in the rooms or in prices, but it still was able to give us a proper prediction. So that's
yeah,
great.
it's still know the pattern that we are following in the inputs and how outputs we have given it. So it predicted correctly. Yeah, and that's it. That's all what I have for this point. So, any question?
Perfect, Mariam. Perfect. Actually, there were more people. I think you were busy in presentation. There were more 10 to 15, 10 to 12 people who were there, but unfortunately they had to leave. So, just to whoever is here with us right now, it's the first time Mariam is presenting. So, it's great having you, Mariam, here with us, and it went really good. And so, just I can imagine that it's your first time. Everything went well, and really good job, Mariam. And by the way, the
Thank you.
neural network worked perfectly, so good job on that. So
Thank
the
you.
one who were with us, they had to leave, but it's perfectly fine. And thank you so much for the session, Mariam. I really appreciate it. Maybe in the future we would like to know more. Maybe we can do part 2, part 3, and we can continue on TensorFlow. So as this is like a hot topic, so maybe everyone would be quite interested to know more about it. And in case for now we have Tahmid and Mustafa, if you guys want to have ask any question to Mariam, she's here. I'm here if you guys have any question. We are open to take questions, by the way.
Thank you, Pooja. Thanks for all who attend this session. Uh, Thanks, Tahmid.
Yeah, there were more people who were here, so yes, they had to leave. Few of them had to leave, but it's perfectly fine. And thank you so much for the time and effort that you guys have put in, Tahmid and Mustafa, for staying at the end. And I think Mustafa is from not from Bahrain, if I'm not wrong. He has mentioned that he's from Nigeria, so that's really great having you here in our GDSC chapter. Hoping to see you in the upcoming future sessions as well. All right.
Okay, thank you very much for this wonderful session. My dear sister Mariam, you really tried being at your first presentation. You really tried. Kudos. Thank you very much. And
True.
actually, yeah, I said I'm from Nigeria. I have been following your this in GDSC Bahrain. And, I saw the post yesterday, and the reason actually why uh, yeah, the reason why actually I joined this thing is I'm currently a 400 level student in Osman Afodio University, Sokoto. So my project is a recommender system, and I have started research on that, and I see I need something like that TensorFlow. Actually, I have never take any course or anything related to what's machine learning. So as I see this, let me just join so that I can get something from it, and I really appreciate, and I have get a lot. Thank you very much.
That's really great, Mustafa. And actually that's the motive. This is totally a beginner level. So having you here who is totally learning from scratch, I hope you at least could take away few points, few concepts from Mariam. And even Mariam, it's her first time presenting, so it was really good. And thank you so much for joining us, Mustafa. Hoping to see you in our upcoming sessions as well.
Thank you very much. God's willing.
All right. Mariam, would you like to conclude if you have something? then we could end our session, and hopefully we can continue on our next sessions. Hopefully if you would make part 2, that would be great, Mariam. I would highly recommend you to.
Thanks, Mustafa. It's our pleasure to have you with us. And yeah, Buja, I would like to have a multiple sessions. It's really good to have it.
All right. So if we don't have any more questions, we can sum up today's session, and hopefully we see you guys on our session. There is also a session tomorrow. If you guys are available, do join us on tomorrow's session. You can. I hope you guys have a great time, and good night. Thank you, Mariam, again for such a lovely session.